Welcome to True House Stories. I am Lenny Fontana coming out of New York City. And I'm going into focus now. Brooklyn, New York, Carroll Gardens, to a block that has been made famous by a record label owner who has 4 to 5 decades under his belt. Like all of us, he started as a kid. He's a disco fanatic, went through the whole disco era, went into the freestyle era, went into all the house music era, and so forth. Today, he runs a fabulous radio station. It's called the Johnny D Experience. He's one of the best A&R guys I remember ever meeting in our lives. He'll tell you where you stand and how tall you are with a smile, but he'll tell you the truth. And he'll tell you how short you are too when he needs to. So we got A&R. We got a DJ master mixer. He was on WKTU, used to do the master mix showcases every week, Saturday night dance party, week after week, year after year. Played great music. One song I always remember him playing all the time, no matter what set it was Rolling Down a Mountainside.
Yeah,
It was a signature song for him. Knew that he knows. Rolling Down, Man in Green, everybody. Go learn that record. Great song. So without further ado, let's bring up Henry Street's Kid Wizard of Carroll Gardens, Maron, the Cobble Hill area, Brooklyn, New York, Johnny D De Mairo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello, thanks.
Happy
That was a
Thanksgiving.
beautiful introduction.
He said he wants the best.
We got to make it special today. You know, Thanksgiving Eve and everything. It's got to be hot.
It's got to feel good. Let me make the volume a little louder so everybody can hear you on Instagram.
Yes.
We're on Instagram Live, everybody, too, and Facebook. Share away. So, Johnny, I'm not going to waste no time because there's a lot to cover.
Yes.
I've given a lot to it already, but I want you to take over because this is not Lenny's show. This is Johnny D's show today.
Okay.
Johnny, here's the deal. First question out of the box right away. Music is an important part of your life.
Yes.
Okay? When does music truly, or when do you find music?
Yeah, early on. I mean, my sister's 6 years older than me, so she was a very big influence between the disco stuff, pop stuff, Chicago, Howell Melvin. She was into a lot of stuff, and she turned me on to things. And there was radio in New York at the time, ABC, which was an AM thing. And then when the FM thing kicked in between Frankie Crocker on BLS, Disco 92, and then 99X, which converted to 98.7 KISS, those 3 stations I was like locked into. I was constantly in radio, making playlists and writing down the countdowns and stuff. I was, obsessed with radio.
So then here we go. So basically, like all of us, radio changed your life, basically.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do now with the experience, which we'll get into down the road. But it's my station is basically something I feel that radio is lacking across the board. And what I do with my station is I bring back the memories and that feeling of what it was like to have that shock value and the oh wow, and haven't heard that record and wow, I can't believe he did that. Kind of Frankie Crocker-esque kind of a situation. Frankie in his prime.
Well, I'm going to say this. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. Anybody's ever been to the librarian's home, this man's home here? It's incredible. The record collection is so pristine and is so well maintained and has everything.
Yeah, it's a very tight.
It's a jeweler. For a record for a person that appreciated, someone that really went out of their way to collect as a record collector. Crazy collection.
Yeah, very. I always say it's fat free. There's not a lot of promo junk in there. It's pretty much every record has a story.
It's a clean collection. So
very clean.
So your sister gives you the, between ABC radio course and
And just at that time, just in the world in the early '70s, you could buy records everywhere. If you went to the locksmith up the corner, he'd have a cubby with 25 records and a little list of the top 25, top 50, top 100. So if you were at a clothing store, wherever you went, records were everywhere. So I was constantly buying records. It was just I really I preferred them over toys all the time. It was an unbelievable thing. You could constantly play it over and over again, and I really didn't get sick of records a lot. It was, I feel like the records became a part of me. So as I got older, it wasn't like, oh, I played that record so much, I'm over it. That became a part of me. I just kept adding to it. I do it to this day. I mean, I'm still being turned on to music. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about music, where you can constantly be turned. You could be at a restaurant and somebody's playing some crazy channel and you hear some Brazilian record that turns you on. So I love that about music.
When is this so as in transitional stage, at that time you're learning about the music, but when does it begin for you to, or did you see someone DJing? When does that start,
78, 79, there was a place called Roller Palace in Brooklyn, roller skating rink. And when I first walked in, something just hit me, and I was like, wow, this, like, you have those out of body moments where you're just like, I know something crazy just happened. And I remember the guy had Spacer on, Sheila B and Devotion, and I just walked in and this incredible sound system. These people were skating, and I was never a great skater. I wish I was better, but just to watch the people and this sound system. And after we left that place, there was a team club next to it called Patches, and we walked into that place as another guy, and he's playing Just a Touch of Love, and I'm just and that was where I really looked where the DJ booth was, and that was when the whole DJ light went off. I was like, wow, who's this guy playing music? And Roller Palace, I couldn't tell where the DJ was, so I wasn't really thinking overly about where music was coming from. But with the Patches Club, I saw the booth, saw the guy with the records, and that was just okay. That was the little spark. So then we fast forward a little. A friend of mine, who was my best friend at the time, decided that he wanted to meet girls, so he was going to do it through DJing. I always had girl. I never had a problem with that. So he bought one turntable. My friend around the corner bought the other turntable. They had a mixer. They'd get together and they'd play records. The guy around the corner, Frank, knew what he was doing, but the other guy who really got me into it had no idea. And I'm telling him, there's pitch over here. Like, there's an art to this, and he just never got it. So I was very into, okay, you got to mix records, have to be on beat. There has to be that element of surprise. So I've come from that end of it, where the DJ, I mean, there are a lot of debates say about, David Mancuso played one record after the other. That's beautiful. I don't do drugs. I wasn't there for that. That's a jukebox to me. God bless them. People that love that era, that's just not me. For that, if somebody's going to just play one record after the other, come to my house. I have the best records ever. You want to pull records out of my wall and play them? When my son was 5, he could do that. As far as the sound system being, oh my God, I think you got to be on incredible drugs to truly appreciate these sound systems that people talk about. So I don't really do drugs, and I'm more concerned with the music than hearing this. I've never been in a club. I mean, I've been to Studio 54. I've been to clubs where the sound system was great, but I've never heard separation like I'm in a Quincy Jones session. And I feel like a lot of these stories that are, from the 70s to today get a little bit liquefied. But that's another story. Anyway, the music part, the DJing, the technicality part to me was very important. And as a DJ starting in 1979, looking at the credits of the records, all of this was incredibly intriguing to me. I loved it all. Where was it mastered? Where I just look into the run out groove. I was just interested in every part of the record. It was all interesting to me. So it was important, and it was I didn't take it I don't take it lightly today, and I didn't take it lightly then. It's something that I feel that we as a community, there should be some kind of a placement test before somebody can go buy 2 turntables and a mixer. I think there should be. I just think that it shouldn't be as easy as it is for somebody to just say, "Hey, I'm a DJ." But it's just that's a whole other thing.
Well, let's explore this for a second, okay? Back in the day, when we all started, we needed to learn how to blend properly and do transitions. As I remember,
Yes.
Steve Diakiso yelled at me and says, "No, it wasn't mixing; it was transitions." Got it. Okay. Um, what did it take for you to master that art at being a young kid? Because we were all listening to the radio. We all heard the master mixes. We were
Yes.
all
Well,
going.
I think the most important part of DJing is you have to know your music. And I know every nook and cranny of the records that I love and play, and every hi-hat, every tempo change, every different part. And I think that's your most important part. Anybody can sit in front of a computer and say, at 3 minutes, line up this 123 beat per minute record with this 123 beat per minute record, hit the start stuff. But then you still have to execute. So this sync button that people talk about, it's still not that easy because you still have to come out of it. There has to be a fade. There are still bars involved. This one's going to stop talking. This one's going to start talking. You still have. There's an art there, and the people that do it well, I take my hat off to. They could be the biggest assholes on the planet. If they show me that talent, I love them. End of story. That's just the thing. You win me what your talent with this. And I really don't think it's rocket science. I don't think I'm curing cancer, but I think that there are far too few that you can go to and say, "Wow, listen to this guy." And we have big name guys on the radio. You have guys making $70 million a year on a stage in front of a computer, pumping their fist. I don't. I mean, God bless. I don't get that at all. Being a DJ over 41 years, so you run into relatives. Hey, John. I just read in Forbes magazine that this guy Axwell made $30 million last year. How do you defend yourself? You're DJing 2 times, 20 years more than this guy. You know way more. How do you defend yourself? It's one of the craziest things. It's like you build houses and you're a guy that gets your hands dirty. You put the foundation in and you do the plumbing, the electric, you do all these things, the window, you put the best things possible. And then some guy across the street pulls up on a truck with a prefab house. That's basically the difference of what we're talking about. You know, it's like
But
it's
does it make it right or wrong?
okay. Well, listen. Well, I'm going to tell you what the thing is. I think the public as a whole is, when it comes to music, I'll say it's very forgiving, and they don't necessarily care about the stuff that I care about. So as far as a guy being technically correct, wow, that DJ blew my mind. I think that today, I mean, listen, I have people that follow me and appreciate and respect me, and I love that. And I think it's a great thing. But for the most part, if you play a record somebody wants to hear, that's what they care about. I say this all the time. If you're a photographer and you take blurry pictures, you're probably not going to get booked for the next wedding or something. But if you're a DJ and you're absolutely horrible, but you play I Will Survive or whatever hell they want to hear at that moment, that's all they remember. They don't remember the train crash to get to I Will Survive. They just remember that you played I Will Survive. Only people that are really conditioned to people that are in like my world or your world or in a world of like, hey, this is how a DJ is supposed to be, whether it's house, disco, hip hop, whatever it is. There are DJs that are tight that can really do it and pull it off. So when you're around that, you can hear a bad DJ. But for the most part, I don't think the public cares. And I don't think when you look at these guys that are making 50 million a year, that's aside from the fact that it's all pre-programmed and it's tracky and there aren't many vocals or whatever. You got these kids that are on all kinds of drugs to begin with. So it's how much are they even, when they leave there, can they go buy records? Oh yeah, I want that record that goes don't like how, that's part of the demise of our scene, which I guess we can get into at some other point down the road. But
Well, that's why you see the cameras. They recruit. And that's another thing that drives me crazy. We'll get into that in a moment. But you see thousands and thousands of people.
You have nobody in the moment. People are not in the moment. It's thank God.
When we were going out dancing, you remember what was it like back then?
Listen, I say it all the time. I'd be on the bridge at Studio 54 having the time of my life. I thank God I'm not going through this today. I thank God that we had what we had, and things. I mean, listen, would I love to have footage of me at all my clubs in the 80s? Absolutely. But I wouldn't trade that time of what I had to say, okay, today I'm going to be doing it and, try to catch up. I'm glad I was there for some of the golden age. That's pretty much it. I wouldn't trade.
That's good. And I said the same because it wouldn't be who we are today if we didn't have that around us.
Yes.
And we got to catch all the first generation guys.
Yeah.
You know that. We caught a lot of them. Now, not to say they were really good.
Yeah.
But we did catch.
Well, listen, I mean, I think that another great part was that we were there for that part of that music. So when you look at the disco, the disco era, being in New York in the 70s, I mean, what's better than that? It was just, there was so much stuff around you. And then
let me show this picture, everybody. Let me show this picture. So don't get nervous. This is what he's talking about, the era. Look at the talent around him.
Look at that. Johnny Carson and Frankie Crocker. That's one of my radio promos. Like
Johnny that's a kind of talent.
Show, Frankie Crocker in stereo. That's it.
And how many records did Frankie Crocker break?
Frankie Crocker, Frankie Crocker, the thing about Frankie Crocker was he wasn't programmed. So he was the programmer. He was at a black-owned station, one of the few that, up until a couple of years ago when Emmis took them over, they were like the last ones in a major market. But the thing about Frankie that was incredible was he truly lived it. I remember, he'd talk about the garage or, he'd have an acetate at this time, baby, the same one that I actually have that acetate, but it was the acetate that was given to Larry on a Saturday and Frankie had on a Monday afternoon. I actually have that acetate. But the crazy thing about Larry, about Frankie would be, he'd play Billie Jean and the record would end and he picked up the needle and put it on again. And as simple as that sounds, and people can say, oh, what's the big deal? It was fucking iconic. It wasn't like he hit the back arrow. He picked the needle up and put it down again. And he said, that's just too good to hear once. Little things like that. This is 40 years later. I remember like it was yesterday. And this is what this guy did and his sign off and just his personality, everything about it was just so great. And you loved the arrogance. Like you wanted it. But then you went to KTU and you had those guys, which I loved all of them. G. Keith Alexander, Joe Corsi, Roscoe, Paco. Those guys, to me, they were speaking to me. I was, a person loving disco and I really was, I tune in and it was, you'd hear when Jelly Bean was on, you'd hear Jelly Bean. And I was like, oh my God, like, who's this Jelly Bean guy? And like, how incredible, how lucky is he that this station is doing that for him? And then people in my neighborhood walking around with Jelly Bean shirts. Jelly Bean's biggest thing really came from Brooklyn, and he's not even from Brooklyn. But the Brooklyn Cousins, they made Jelly Bean who he is.
Well, let me clarify. Hang on, everybody. wait. In the Funhouse, New York City, okay, you had factions of different bridge and tunnel crowds. You had the Bronx crowd. You had the Bensonhurst crowd, Brooklyn Bay Ridge crowd. You had Ozone Park crowd. Okay. And they'd have their shirts from the neighborhoods they came. They would stick to each other and they would battle.
Yeah.
And they would scream. So that's what he's talking about. Brooklyn loved him. So did Ozone Park loved Jelly Bean.
Yeah.
It was their club. It was an Italian, Spanish thing. They loved it. And
I always felt that he was so blessed to have that because, that wasn't like, the DJ thing. Now it's the superstardom and the guys in the booth dancing all over the place, acting crazy. That wasn't what it was. I was going to Studio 54. Leroy Washington, nobody knew who he was. If you would have been outside the club and you asked the 5,000 people at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll give you $10. Who's the DJ just now? Not a person in the place knew who he was. His name on the flyer was smaller than Made in Canada. Nobody even knew his name. I loved Leroy, whatever. I thought he had the hardest job in the world. But
and tell me how great of a DJ was he?
Listen, Leroy to me, a lot of people, talk about different guys in New York. To me, Leroy, Studio 54 just was a life changer for me. And I wasn't Steve Rebel 77. I'm not going to lie, like an Andy Cohen and the rest of these guys that were 9 talking that they were in there. And quite honestly, I wouldn't have wanted to been there when Liza Minnelli walks in, because that would have been the end of my night. I would have been watching her all night. This way, I was going there just for the music. I was the lights, the dropping of the flag when he plays Lady America, playing videos, the bridge that came out, the cocaine moon with the spoon, the whole thing. That was it. And I would sit there and watch him play and be on the dance floor. And every minute of it was just an unbelievable memory. And the fact that he had the hardest gig, and I say that because, listen, you give me a black and a Puerto Rican crowd, that's a dream. I'll play for black and Puerto Rican people 24/7, 365, because they're educated, they know it, they feel the music. White people, very hard. Listen, we have white people that know the music, but overall, when you're at Studio 54, you have 5,000 white people there. They don't, they're not interested in you breaking a record. So he's got to sandwich and make things work, and work between playing Van Halen Jump or Caribbean Queen and then dropping Spank. And he was just doing stuff that was so, and I loved it because I play that way. I don't play sets. I'm going to do a hip hop. I play whatever I'm going to play. I make it work. I also believe in turning people on to music. That's one of, I think, my most important part of me being on this planet, is just to turn people on to music. I've made tapes for years. That's been a big thing. Of course, I could sit there and play IOU and Situation and Planet Rock and all the hits, but I never did that. I always sandwiched in Patty Austin. It's going to be special. I always try to let people know about records they're never going to know. That was always my thing. And I feel that the DJ culture is missing that, for the simple fact that back in the day, it was one DJ who would spin from 10 to 6. If you had to take a piss, you had to put a long record on and run. Now, you look at these flyers, and it looks like a newspaper. Got 75 guys spinning. So now, let's just say you have 5 guys spinning. How are you going to break new music? Okay? If Lenny Fontana, Johnny D, Nicky P, Tommy Muscle, okay, 5 of us are going to be at the gig. What are we going to do? We all want to get booked for the next gig. So we're going to play hits. We're going to play heat. We're going to be basically playing peak whenever we're on. That's not fair to the crowd. It's not fair to anything. And you're not breaking new music because you want to get booked the next week. If I go to and say, you know what, guys, I'm going to open up. I'm going to set the table, which personally I would prefer. I'll stay at 113 all night. But I'm not going to be the highlight. Lenny Fontana comes on 2 o'clock playing peak. That's what they're going to look at. So I think that the one DJ taking you on a journey, that whole art is gone. And that's a shame. I'd much rather hear one guy, 2 the most.
You're right.
I don't like more.
But they don't have that anymore.
And that's why you don't see me at a lot of these places, because I'm not very interested in hearing a bunch of guys. If I'm going to see Lenny Fontana, I want you to take me from 10 to 4. Take me on that journey. I want to see where you're going to take me. I want that ride. I don't want you to come in with your 10 records.
Yeah, right. Your 8 big records out of 10, and you're in and out.
Yeah, exactly.
So who was the most, for you, who would be your mentor for you? Who would be the mentor guy that you say, for example, for me, I always talk about 3-4 guys. I always talk about T. Scott Shep,
yes,
Harry Levan, and Tony Humphries, were really a big thing for me.
Yes. For me, I mean, listen, radio-wise, hands down, Shep Pettibone, Latin Rascals, dynamic duo. You put those 3 elements, I sing, I'm like a walking medley. So the Shep thing, the edits and stuff, Latin Rascals, Tony and Albert were just, I still don't think we caught up to what they were thinking. Those guys are still on another planet. Dynamic duo, Musto's like my brother now, and I got to know him years later. And the talent, the different execution, the edits, the layering, the incorporating some import you didn't know, whatever, loved it all. That molded me from the radio standpoint. Club-wise, Danny Cole, a guy I met in 1981. A friend of mine was dating his sister, and they invited me to a block party in my neighborhood. There's my man Danny, great shop, Plaza Suite, and I wish I had that hair back. And And I went to the club with him in 82. I DJ'd his sister's Sweet 16. At the end of it, he said, listen, why don't you come to the club? I said, yeah, come pick me up. I was 14 years old at the time. Picked me up, went to the record pool. We had lunch, whatever. We wound up at the club at 9:30. We used to have a ritual where we'd have a Bloody Marys from 9:30 to 10. And nobody could outdrink Danny. Danny was just, whatever. So then 10 o'clock would kick in. He'd be doing his Johnny Black all night. And I was doing the light show, which was, I was a talented guy. There were maybe 2 or 3 switches. One controlled the disco ball. One had some kind of a glorified strobe, and there might have been one other thing. And I was just, hitting my switches. And I was so happy to be there. The booth was the size of a shoebox, and it was incredible. And a couple of months in, he looked at me at 5 to 12, and the dance floor got packed. And he says, all right, I'll be back. And I wasn't really following what the hell he was doing. And he basically was telling me, go ahead, here's your chance, do it. And I killed the place till 2:30, came back in. I walked back over to my light thing. I went back to my 3 switches, or maybe it was 2. And he was like, yo, we had a great thing. And then we played together after that. If I wasn't there, I was at Studio 54. I was there also on Friday nights with Danny. And we just had a great time. We he was a lot older than me. He turned me on to stuff, but I was in Vinyl Mania 3 times a week, so I was turning him on to stuff. So it was a great thing musically. For the most part, we really came together, and that lasted 4 years. I mean, that went from 82 to 86, and I always give him a lot of love for that. I was a kid, and he saw that I knew what I was doing. And he put me on, and it was great, man. It was, I wouldn't trade that time for anything.
Nobody understands that unless you live that.
Yeah.
How that moment of, hey, you know what, take over.
Yeah. Incredible. My heart was beating. It probably took me 20 minutes for my heart just to get to a regular pace. And then I was like, all right, I'm doing it. It's like the place is good. People are into it, And he just, I don't even know where he went, but I would look around. I couldn't even see him. So he was in a corner somewhere. And unfortunately, Danny passed a couple of years ago, but Danny was a great guy. And the last couple of years he was alive, we reconnected, which was great. And, that was a great thing for him. And, him putting me on, I always felt I was a guy to put people on. I was never an insecure guy, or, I mean, I'm an overly sensitive guy, but I'm not an insecure guy. So I have no problem putting people on and, hey, Lenny, this is so-and-so. And if you guys become the next Gamble and Huff, God bless. Like, I'm not bothered. You know what I mean? This industry doesn't exist like that.
Wait. We don't have a problem amongst us doing that.
Yeah.
We never had a problem amongst us.
Yeah.
The guys, our friend, you know that.
Yes.
It's the other guys that had a problem with us getting in because they were afraid that we were going to take their slots.
Yes. Well, I mean, listen to me. There's always going to be the insecurity, and understandably, I mean, listen, I remember being in clubs for years, and club owners would say, I'm giving you all this money. I could bring my nephew in here, give him and his friends drinks, and they'll spin for free. And the truth of the matter is, that's really the mentality. They didn't give a shit. They rarely cared about the DJ and what we were doing. They looked at it like we were just there to somehow get people to the bar and get people to pay. Like, you very rarely had a club owner or club owners that cared about the actual club and everything. The guy Eugene from Jersey in Trona is one of the few like club guys who owned Temptations and Chicago's, all these clubs, that cared about the club and the DJ and the booth, and like he actually really cared about all that stuff. And you do all these other things as the DJ. You always kind of like, whatever. Always felt that you were replaceable. You never felt like you had that security.
You know what? We can get the guy the bar back to do your job.
The bar guy could play your records. And listen. And
well, you know what? Why don't you bring him up here?
Yeah, but unfortunately, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, would the dance floor care? The guy plays the records they want to hear. I mean, they probably wouldn't care. Listen, Louis Vega to me, flawless DJ. Now, if you're booking Louis because he's flawless, okay, as a DJ, I love that. If you're booking Louis just because he has a reputation, you don't really know Louis. Like there were a lot of DJs with a name just as big as Louis, but Louis can execute. You know what I'm saying? So I like people saying, I'm going to book Louis because Louis can actually spin, not because Louis is Louis. And I think that there are too many big names that can't deliver.
Well, because the generation of today has made it where it's a producer-driven business. So the producer creating a hit record, the hit record is the driving force, or should say the lights that bring everybody.
But even that, you know what? Could you say in the last 15 years, any of us, I'm going to say us and include all of us, who's had a hit in the last 15 years? I'm talking about a substantial hit. I'm not talking about, number one record.
You're talking like a Robin S., a CeCe Peniston, a Bucket.
Well, I say a Kings of Tomorrow, which is the last record I look at in the house scene that I signed, that I think I don't know of a record bigger than that in the last 15 years from any of us. Have there been some poppy records from TS? Yeah, but I'm talking about on a club underground level.
Talking where it's got an R&B bass dance record.
Yeah, I mean, and then not only that, from us. And when I say us,
I know from Marshall Jefferson, all the house people.
Our house people. I'm not talking about somebody. I just look at what we had and what we used to put out. The records that were coming out by all of our peers, they were just wow.
Can you define?
Kind of went away.
Johnny D, can you define when you say hit? What do you mean? Please search for part 2 of this podcast on the platform you're watching or listening to. And please do not forget to follow us.